Welcome everyone back to another episode of Choose Inclusion. I'm here as always with my wonderful co-hosts, Yubi and Mike. How are you guys doing?
I am fantastic, Nina Ubaldo. I am so excited for our guest today.
Yeah, good morning or good day, everyone. Yeah, excited to be here and just getting ready for the holidays.
So we have an amazing guest today. As Mike and Yubi have already heard, I am pretty excited about this entire conversation. I don't know how we're going to pack it into 30 minutes, but we're going to at least touch on some of the many different topics that we can dive into with Brian Woody White. He's the Chief Diversity and Inclusion Officer at Homebridge Financial. He has held multiple executive positions, chief level C-suite positions at a variety of large companies, including Aetna and Countrywide. He's worked in the mortgage industry since 1986. And has often been the first or only Black executive at these massive companies. Brian Woody, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. Thank you. Great to be here.
So Woody, the first question we always ask our guests is just, given everything that's been going on in the world, how are you doing?
I'm doing good. I think, at least for me, some of the changes and some of the communications I see going on, I think it inspires me to think that change is possible. I believe a lot of companies are really starting to look at who they are and what they're trying to do, and that makes me feel good. So I'm doing well.
So I want to dive into kind of your role as Chief Diversity and Inclusion Officer at Homebridge, because you've obviously been an executive for a very long time, for multiple decades now. So you've seen oftentimes what diversity and inclusion initiatives have looked like over the decades. Can you tell us a little bit about kind of your journey into seeing what those look like and how you got into this position today and how you're changing things up?
Sure. Well, two things for me. Most of my career has been in technology, and I don't think it's any new news that there's been a lot of racism and discrimination in technology for a lot of African Americans, Hispanics, just in the tech industry in general. Many articles out about it. Everybody knows about that. So I've experienced a lot of that in my career. And a lot of my first has always been going to companies and, being the first, CIO or being the first CTO or first director of development, whatever it is. And I can honestly say that over time, over the last 20 years, I have only worked next to, when I say at a peer level, I've only worked next to a Black woman once in the 25, 30 years, and a Black man once. Outside of that, I'm the only one in the suite, and that's it. Over the years, each company that I work with is, they've called these initiatives various things over the years, not necessarily diversity, but just, employee communications programs. They've given it so many different names. And I've always been tagged, or I volunteered to work with these programs and help launch them. And many of them have been absolutely disasters. And I think one that I communicated to you was, I walked into a meeting, which was the first meeting. And typically if I'm involved in something, I like to actually go through what everybody else is going to go through. So I went to the first meeting, and the first thing that they did was hand me a badge that said inferior Black male. And I just kind of said, what is it? What do you want me to do with this badge? And they said, I need you to wear it because people need to know how you feel every day of your life. And I just looked and said, what makes you think I feel like an inferior Black male walking around everywhere? And just out of curiosity, what does everybody else's sign say? And the white guy said, superior white male. And basically, I shut down the program. I worked very hard to shut it down. It was shut down. But what was also interesting was in my walk from that meeting to the executive suite, I never noticed it before, but in the lobby, we had all 50 flags of all the states of the union. And they chose to fly, what flag for Georgia. And when I went to the suite, I brought that up at the same time. And, at the end of the day, they eventually shut down the program, but their answer to the Confederate flag flying in the lobby was to just remove all the flags. That was their answer. So like I said, I've been through a lot of these programs. Not many have not been great. They don't get the funding they need, and they tend to die on the vine. And I think you did ask me, what do I plan to do at Homebridge as well? So from a Homebridge standpoint, I started with multiple pillars, not necessarily just focused on diversity and inclusion for the employees, for example. So one of the first things, meaning pillar number one, for example, is really looking at recruiting, monitoring our recruiting, seeing, are our recruiters really going out and trying to bring in diverse candidates? And if you can imagine from a diversity standpoint, if I wanted to hire new college student, college graduates, the bottom line is a lot of these recruiters, they'll go out, look at US News, World Reports, and that's where they'll focus. And if you go to many colleges and you look at the minority numbers, they're very low. So you can't go to UConn, or University of Maryland, or Yale and say, that's where I'm going to go to find African American and Hispanic students, because it's low. The participation levels are low. So you have to do something extra. And that's kind of what we're doing at Homebridge. We're really going the extra mile and not doing the same old thing to not only reach out to people, but do a number of things. We just partnered with a company called Circa. And Circa basically helps us get deeper into the community so that we can reach out to LGBTQ communities, African American, Hispanic, Asian, and they will know that we have jobs available, because going the old route doesn't work. The other pillar that we have going on is with our employees, making sure that they're okay. How are they feeling? How are they, what are they experiencing at Homebridge? So, I'm going to do things like a pulse survey and, create D&I groups around the organization so that we get a good idea of how people are actually doing and what they're experiencing at Homebridge. The other pillar is affordable lending. The bottom line is we know the story about African Americans and Hispanics and Asians, and we're just at the bottom of the pillar. You may not know this, but right now the mortgage industry has been going through a massive boom, but not in the African American community, not in the Hispanic community, not in the Asian community. And the bottom line is we have to fix that. And, to fix that issue, we can talk about it later in terms of why the minority community is not involved in the boom. But that's going to be a focus for Homebridge as well. In addition to that, we're also going to be focused on business contracts. So, we're a big company, we're nationwide. We have cleaning contracts, T-shirts, all sorts of things. So I'm going to be going through those contracts as well, appraisal companies, to see where we can give women-owned businesses and minority business some of that opportunity as well. And we also at Homebridge just launched what we call our homegrown program, which is basically taking people who may not have a college degree and walking them through the process of obtaining positions in the mortgage space, processors, underwriters. The bottom line is, for me, the current education system, we got to get away from people learning wood shop and home ec. People have to come out with other skills, and that's our effort to try and do that.
Mike and Yubi, I know that I'm going to end up dominating this entire conversation with questions, so I want to give you space before I take over and ask Woody all the questions.
No, I'm good. I mean, there was so much in what you just talked about, Woody, right there. Like, I don't want to waste time with my voice. You go for it, because I know we have a lot to pack in.
Same here. I just need to be a listener today, because this is going to be amazing.
All right, so then I will dive into the next question then, because I think one of the things that you really hit on, Woody, was really around the kind of inequities around financial literacy, the impact that has, the lack of opportunities in Black, Latinx, and specific Asian communities, Pacific Islander communities. Can you give us kind of a little bit of history lesson, in a way, of kind of how this lack of trust has been forged with the lending industry and the financial industry with the Black community, and what that impact has been? Sure,
no problem. So, when you take a look at the numbers, and you see a boom like we have right now, and you realize that, African Americans, Hispanics, and Asians are still struggling to get into a home, right? You still hear the same thing. I'm the first to get into to buy a house. It's 2020 and we're still hearing that same thing. And, people have to understand that when it comes to things like down payments, it takes almost 10 to 15 years now to save enough money for a down payment given the cost of homes today. So I'm going to give you an idea of the number of reasons why Blacks primarily, as well as Hispanics and Asians, just don't participate the way we should. And the first reason has to do with the lack of historical knowledge and transfer. So for example, in the Black community, there is no big, there's no massive history of our people owning homes. So we can't go to Uncle Joe and Uncle Joe is passing down all these stories about how he got a mortgage, what is a stip, what is an arm, and none of that is there. And we know that because if we know that African Americans, Hispanics, and Asians aren't participating, then that knowledge is not being transferred. So it's not a dinner table conversation about mortgages, how to get mortgages. So, year after year after year after year, it's just a bunch of people that are basically very astute in how to get rent and how to rent an apartment. But beyond that, it's just not a lot of historical knowledge that's passed down, and people just think, they're very fearful of the process. And now I'll talk about why they're fearful of the process. So there's lack of trust. There was a time when I was growing up and everybody in the neighborhood had things like Christmas club accounts, and people were saving their money in Christmas club accounts and things like that where you get no interest, but banks were basically pawning that stuff off on the African-American community, the Hispanic community, like it was great. But, for what it is, it's really an account that gives you no kind of interest and you're just popping your money in there and the bank is floating the cash. So when you get to the lack of trust, you have to go all the way back and you have to remember, and I'm not talking about Middle Passage back, I'm talking about when, in our communities. So let me give it to you like this. If there's no historical knowledge passed down about mortgages, what historical knowledge is passed down in the Black community? Well, things like the Tuskegee experiment. We know that the government sanctioned a number of things against Black men and they experimented on us. So it's stuff like that. Then you take a look at what happened in 2008, the subprime scenario where mostly minorities were crushed and there's just no trust. So it's going to be kind of hard to go into the Black community and say, you can get a home, you should trust us. It's just not going to be that easy. Everybody's going to have to go the extra mile to get these communities to trust again. And if you understand where the mortgage industry is right now, the biggest opportunities for mortgage companies is in the African American and Latino and Asian community. So if there's no trust there, mortgage companies have to do something different. They have to get more grassroots than they're doing today. The other issue, I'm sorry.
Go ahead, please.
The other issue is the lack of understanding of the mortgage process, right? If there's no historical knowledge, people think they understand the mortgage process when they really don't. And they'll listen to all sorts of rumors. The bottom line is when you're going to get a mortgage, the first thing everybody has to understand is this is most likely going to be the biggest purchase you're going to make. So you can imagine if you go get a car and they're looking at your credit and everything, that also means that if you go get a house, they're drilling into your background like you couldn't believe. And the first thing that a lot of minority borrowers don't have are good budgets. Details about where they are, what their debt to income ratio. They're learning all of this at the same time they're trying to get a mortgage, and it just becomes daunting. And that lack of understanding just drives people away. And then you have the fourth issue, which is racism. The bottom line is I was watching Good Morning America, and they had a little documentary about how a Black woman who had a white husband, she decided to go get an appraisal for her home. But because she was Black in the neighborhood, they appraised her house $100,000 less than every other home in the neighborhood. So what she decided to do was get rid of all the photos in the house, call another appraisal company that also gave them a poor appraisal, called them back with a different appraiser, and it was appraised $100,000 more. So these kinds of biases and racism, all of that gets bundled in with the lack of trust. And when you look at it all together, in terms of a package, that's why African Americans, Hispanics, and Asians are just not in the loop.
Yeah, I mean, I think that it's such a multi-layered problem, right? Like our brains just want the simplest answer, and we're kind of like, let's blame this company, or let's blame this president, or let's blame Congress, or let's blame the individual for not knowing better. And there's just so many layers to all of this. And I think one of the interesting conversations we had was about because I think the 2008 housing crisis is a great explanation of like how this stuff is so multi-layered. Could you talk to us about like how a lot of the housing crisis of 2008, which was the single biggest wipeout of Black wealth in recent history, was kind of fueled by Congress in a way? Can you tell us a little bit about that and how that played out when it came to the private sector?
Yeah, I think overall, we all know what happened with subprime loans. They were, basically loans that got people into homes, and in a way, it funded people's dreams. You have people that had a certain amount of income, but everybody played with the numbers to allow people to get into homes they truly could not afford. And it's great to allow people to dream to get a home, but you have to get homes that make sense for your budget. But the bottom line is, during that time, the prices of homes just went through the roof. And most people in most neighborhoods knew the house next door was probably worth $200,000. But during that time, the price got jacked up to $500,000. And really what the consumer was supposed to do was walk away. Just say, you know what, can't afford it, walk away. But what ended up happening was there was a lot of uproar. Congress had to get involved. People can't afford homes, and looking for mortgage companies and financial services to be more creative. And they were more creative. They created the subprime loan, and it did allow people to get into homes. But it got to a point where you had no documentation loans. If you go back and look at it today, you'd say it's ridiculous that we were giving people homes, with the kind of low-level documentation we were doing. But at that point, we were funding dreams and not necessarily what people could afford. And we know how that worked out. It basically crashed the industry from a bond level, and everything just fell apart. So, and the minority community got hurt more than anyone else.
Do you see anything similar coming up on the horizon for the potential economic impacts of everything that's happening now to kind of Black, Latinx, underrepresented communities?
Yeah, I think we're all going to have to take a look at what comes next post-COVID, right? Because if from a impact standpoint, if more African Americans and Hispanics are impacted by COVID, when I say impacted, what I mean is losing their jobs and eating up all their savings to survive. So if a lot of people have eaten up their savings to survive, and that savings was really previously to buy homes and other things, the impact of COVID is yet to be seen. I think everybody wants to, probably think that we'll recover quickly. And I think from an economist standpoint, that it might seem that way, but when you get down into the communities, the recovery is not going to be as fast. Anybody that struggled before and they lost all their income and their savings, it's going to be major.
You'd mentioned before we started recording, kind of the discussions around the impact of the incoming Biden administration. What do you see? What are your thoughts on that? Is this going to help sort of at least start to course correct in a better direction?
I would say that probably under a Biden administration, you'll see a lot more focus on things like affordable lending. I think the Biden administration will try to figure out a way to be more inclusive with programs. But at the same time, it's a pretty devastating scenario that's going on right now. And, you can't, as much as I know, it seems like we can continue to hand out money. If you remember from a whole quantitative easing standpoint, a lot of that has to be paid back at some point. I just don't want a situation to occur where we get to a point where there's too much money going out, and all of a sudden, taxes and everything get to a point where nobody wants to donate. There are backlashes for many things that have to happen. And I'm just hoping that a Biden administration can manage all of that, because there are many components to what we're dealing with right now.
Woody, I in our pre-call too, you had talked about something that slightly relatable to me when you talked about as CIO, CTO, as a leader in organizations previous, how you would go to trade shows and stuff, and as an executive, you would go to booths, and individuals that were banning those booths wouldn't even acknowledge you because you're Black. Can you talk a little bit more about that story, please?
Oh yeah, yeah. I would say that's been going on for the entire time that I was a manager in IT. I would go to big conferences. I'd walk up to a booth, and it was almost as if I was invisible. Sometimes I would do things just to force them to say something, like, how they have trinkets. I just start picking up trinkets, and finally somebody would say, hey, how can we help you? But, typically it was almost like being invisible. And sometimes I would play games with them. Give you an example. I would have people who work for me, go to these conferences with me, and I'd tell them, I said, watch what happens when I walk up. And we'd walk up to the booth together. It would just say, the name of the company, but it wouldn't list our positions. And they would focus on him and not even answer any of my questions. I would say somewhere around, maybe after being in the senior tech space, after around 5 years, I started tracking it. And I just started looking at some of the vendors who pretty much ignored me. And some of their platforms weren't really that great, but I wanted to find out more. And when I added it up, it's about $45 million loss because they had no interest in answering my questions. And it's still common today. When I go to a conference, I never know what's going to happen. But sometimes I'll get tired of begging for attention, and I'll go do something else.
That is just, I think that's such a powerful stat, Woody. Just like, I'm so glad you tracked it, first of all, because I think that's really important that you tracked it so you can put a number behind this story. There are very powerful Black people in highly influential positions, but because of historical and systemic racism, people are losing out on opportunities. They're losing out on, $45 million is nothing to blink.
Yeah.
Like, that's a lot of money. And it's shameful, honestly, on every single person that manned those booths. If every single one of them went back to their CEOs and said, oh, by the way, I just lost us $1 million contract today.
Right.
How different would this entire landscape look?
Exactly. There's another thing I left out when we talked about a Biden administration. After 2008, there was a lot of regulation installed in the financial services industry. And I think a lot of the boom that we're experiencing right now is because of Trump relaxing some of those regulations. So it'll be interesting to see what Biden does regarding some of those regulations, and whether or not the boom continues as a result.
Woody, what are, just last couple minutes, what are your 2021 hopes? What are the big things that you'd like to see happen? Just in general, in your industry, that you think can happen next year?
I would like to see the momentum continue, recognizing that there is some underserved going on in some of these financial industries and some of the financial areas. I would love to see companies continue the push to address some of those underserved issues and make serious change. It's very easy to talk about it, but like I said before, making change when it comes to things like affordable lending and, education in other areas, it's just not something you're going to do with people going to a website. These are grassroots effort that you have to get down into the community, and you have to work with the community to make change. Like I said, not a lot of trust. So you can't just send out a flyer and think everything's going to be okay. And I just hope companies are not just up for the effort in terms of creating departments to address some of this, but also providing the funding and the understanding that some of this is going to be a grassroots effort to inspire and implement change.
Yeah, it makes me think of like Stacey Abrams' work in Georgia, right? And
Yep.
her efforts over the last 12 years, right? It's been 12 years. Or Judge Carlos Moore, who we interviewed, who he spent, gosh, I think at least the last 4 years working to get the flag changed in Mississippi, right? These aren't these aren't efforts that will just happen, to your point. Like the companies, our country, like these are things that, yeah, I mean, it starts with each and every one of us, and it's going to take some time, but we can, we do it that way, and it's not performative. I think we can see the change. At least that's what I'm hopeful for.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, these are systemic issues, and it will take more to make change.
Well, Woody, this has been an amazing conversation. I really want to thank you so much from the bottom of my heart for joining us today. I think we've hit on so many important elements of what companies can do, what government needs to do, how we can engage grassroots efforts and community organizations and making this change, and kind of all the different layers involved in this. So thank you so much for joining us on the podcast today, Woody. We really appreciate it.
Not a problem. Happy to be here.
Yeah, I'm actually sad, Woody, that we don't have like a 4-part series set up with you, because I don't think 30 minutes is enough, my friend. So thank you as well for the education, for what you do, and more importantly, how you do it.
Not a problem. Just happy to be here and share whatever knowledge I have, and be happy to come back anytime.
Awesome.
We would love to have you back. Let's definitely check back in 6 months and see where we're at with the housing industry, the mortgage industry, financial industry, and everything. And hopefully things will be in a much better place. But I would love to see how everything plays out for you as well. So thank you. Thank you to all of our listeners. As usual, you can find all of our episodes on our website, chooseinclusion.com. Catch us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, all the usual things. And we will catch you all next time. Have a good one, everyone.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.